Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I thought I would do something really fun today and talk about solar returns and what happens when you have your solar return, so your birthday, on an eclipse. Because we have 3 eclipses coming up in June and July 2020, and obviously later in 2020 we have other eclipses. And it's really important to see that when you have an eclipse coming up, that definitely signifies that the year ahead will be life-changing for you, because eclipses are always really potent energies, right? And even if it's not your birthday, it will be significant. But if it's your birthday, it basically means that there's something really intense going on. Because if you believe that nothing in this universe is happening by accident, right? It's no coincidence that you have the birthday on an eclipse during a specific time in your life. It's all set up for you and your evolution before you were even born, right? Because you can determine, obviously, you can look forward or you can look backwards to see when you have your solar returns and what actually happened in your life, right? And I definitely invite you to look at your solar returns more often. So that's basically every single birthday of the year, because it can help you understand what will be the theme of your year ahead, right? And most of the time, in hindsight, you will realize how accurate these solar return charts even are. So what I will do in this video is show you an example of a solar return chart, so a chart of a birthday that happened to be an eclipse, and give you background info of what that actually meant in this person's life, and this person is actually me. It's a solar return chart from 2018, and I will give you some background information of what actually happened in this year, 2018 until 2019, up until now, because this solar eclipse birthday and this year after this solar eclipse birthday has been the very reason why I'm even here today, why basically my whole life changed. And if you happen to have an eclipse birthday this year, I want you to know that this is really the universe helping you to align with your purpose, align with your destiny. If you understand how this solar return chart fits even into the whole concept of your overall purpose, so the story of your birth chart, of course. So if that's exciting you, or if you have a solar return on an eclipse day coming up, then you definitely want to watch this video. And if you would like to dive into the solar return chart, I also do solar return readings, so I could definitely dive into your solar return and birth chart with you together to make more sense of it. But I definitely hope that the example that I give you in this video will already tell you or give you an insight on how powerful it is to look at these solar return charts, because I just definitely know that nothing happens by accident. You know, all of these transits are set for us to align with the purpose, right, that we have, align with the soul contract that we have. So not every single person on this planet will have a birthday ever in their life on an eclipse. So if you are one of the people that have their birthday on an eclipse day, trust me, it's really important to pay attention to that, because it helps you, as I said earlier, to really align with your purpose and align with the path that your soul has chosen before you even came here. And especially given the situation in the world right now, where we are all upside down a little bit, if you have an eclipse birthday, trust me, your next year will definitely transform you and hopefully also the world. And just as a little side note, Donald Trump is actually born on an eclipse. So, you know, that's also not a coincidence that he's basically changing the whole world with his whole presence in the world, right? And then we also have to see that for the US this year, we have an eclipse on the US birthday, so basically the day before, but that still is a really potent energy for the next year for the US. So basically from now until 2020, for the USA, that will be a really transforming year for sure. There's no doubt about it. And to bring it back to the personal level, as I said earlier, we will dive into what it can mean for you if you happened to have an eclipse birthday this year, if that's July 5th, if that's June 21st or June 5th. The day before and the day after would still count as an eclipse birthday, because the energy is still really dominant in the chart. So to get started, I will share my solar return chart with you. This is the solar return chart. As you can see, that's my birthday. That's the solar return chart. And if you do have no idea where to find a solar return chart, then you can simply go to astroseek.com. That's my favorite website. And they have a solar return chart calculator. And you can basically, look at every single year that you possibly want to look at and see how the charts are calculated for that solar return. And you have a couple of options. You can look just at the solar return chart, or you can line it up with your birthday or with your birth chart, which we will do in the second layer of this video, because first of all, I want to dive into the solar return chart. And that's basically also the method I use when I cast solar return charts for clients. So what you can see is the solar return is always when the sun is at the exact same degree point as your natal sun. So sometimes your birthday can actually be a day before, a day after. It really is just based on the exact same degree point of the sun, okay? So for 2018, it happened to just be on my birthday, on my actually birthday, August 10th, but it was really like last minute. So it could have been the 11th as well. But anyways, so that's basically the solar return chart. So what I would do is I would obviously look at the rising sign, because the rising sign is always the sign that has to rise in my consciousness, even in this year, most dominantly in this year, okay? So for 2018 up until 2019, I was a Taurus rising, okay? I was a Taurus rising, which would make Venus my chart ruler in this year. So where is Venus located? That would be like the first thing that I would look into. And as you can see, Venus is in my 5th house in Libra, okay? And we can look at the degree points. It's 3 degrees of Libra. It's important to keep in mind just for you, but I will bring it back to my natal chart, because I know that 3 degrees of Libra is a really dominant place in my natal chart. But okay, it's the 5th house and it's Venus in Libra. So there's something along the lines of really expressing myself creatively. It's the 5th house and it's Libra. So it could even have to do something with relationships as well. So let's just look at the other key players in my solar return chart. Obviously, what we have to see is this packed stellium here in Leo in the 4th house, which basically makes the eclipse, right? It's the lunar node, the north node, the collective north node was in Leo. Then we have my Leo sun together with Mercury retrograde and the moon in Leo as well. So what is really interesting that I'm also born with a Mercury in Leo, also retrograde. I am born with Mercury retrograde, as I said before, in Leo as well. So that's nothing new, but obviously we have now the moon here in its home department, the 4th house. So of course, that's really interesting to look into. And it could actually already mean that, well, maybe it has to do with me being more family oriented because it's the 4th house, or me being more homey. So is that really the story of my solar return here? Not really, actually, because we obviously want to look at the soul in the chart, which is always Pluto, right? So what is my soul doing in this chart? Well, as you can see, it's literally on top of the midheaven. In this chart, Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn, literally on top of the midheaven. So that definitely indicates that there's something happening in that year relative to my career, my outward expression, my legacy, my public image, all of these kinds of things, my outside structures as well, right? Because Capricorn rules the structures and Pluto is transforming them. So something along those lines of, you know, where I put my structures in other people's hands, maybe. All of these things can definitely be an indicator. And then when we look at the ruler of that midheaven, which would then be Saturn, the ruling planet of Capricorn, it's in the 9th house and also in Capricorn and also retrograde. Okay, so right up from the bat, I can definitely tell that this year it will be a really reflective year, because you see a lot of retrogrades in the chart. It's Pluto retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Mars retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Chiron retrograde, and Mercury retrograde. So pretty much everything except for Jupiter is retrograde. Interesting, right? So definitely a big transformation, probably inwardly inside of my own self, right? That needs to be really worked on. And when we take into consideration that I'm a Taurus rising, so it can also mean me really coming home to my body, right? Finding or transforming something along the lines of my body, my physical senses, how I comfort myself, how I value myself, all of these things that ultimately then lead to my self-expression, because I need to know what my value is in order to be creative in that sense. So to bring it back to that midheaven in Capricorn and the Saturn in Capricorn, the ruler of the midheaven, what it definitely suggests is that I learn, or that I'm more serious about finding my own truth, my own belief system to believe in, right? All of these things, because the ninth house is really just a home of your own beliefs, your own principles, your own belief system, all of these things, right? And that's definitely a process that happens inside of myself. And now you can see this blue line here that is really important to see in this chart as well. It's a trine between Saturn and Uranus retrograde, both retrogrades, of course. So happening internally inside of myself. And Uranus retrograde in the 12th house in Taurus definitely also suggests that I probably all of a sudden find this maybe spiritual belief system, this connection to the universe that I've never had before, that then helps me find my own sort of outside structure, making sense of the world, finding my own truth relative to what I believe in, how I want to see the world, how I want to structure my life, maybe even how I want to live. Long distance traveling, all of these things could also be an indicator. But this must have happened all of a sudden without me even expecting it, right? Probably something that I've never even concerned myself before. So all of these things are definitely imprints in the chart. And when you see that Aries rules my 12th house of spirituality, of the subconscious as well, and the ruler of this 12th house is also in my 10th house, right? It's in Aquarius, just arrived in Aquarius, Mars. It's in Aquarius, and it's the 10th house. So there will be probably something that is really unique and different about what I put out there that I've never done before, that makes me maybe feel a little bit weird, but it's definitely something completely different because it's Aquarius. So it's something that I've never done before, but it also reminds me maybe of something that I've done before in a past life, because it's the South Node. And it's definitely working on my tendency maybe that I might have towards being detached, Aquarius, South Node, the lowest expression, and coming more into my own self-expression. That is really here the suggestion with all of this Leo energy. And then 5th house is the ruling house of Leo, that where we literally have Venus. So there's definitely something where I have to step into my own self-expression and bring it then into the top of my chart. So that's obviously the polarity between Pluto, right, and the polarity point, and then also this north and south node right here. So another really interesting thing, as I mentioned before, is that Jupiter is literally the only planet that is moving forward, right? And it's in Scorpio and in the 7th house. So that might indicate either a really, really amazing times when it comes to relationships, right? Partnerships, but it can also mean just one-on-one encounters. So where I work one-on-one with people on a really deep level because it's in Scorpio, okay? And before I move on unpacking the chart, I just want to explain to you what happened between 2018 and 2019, because it was literally my business skyrocketing, okay? So I finally took action, putting myself out there, launching my podcast, launching my YouTube, really putting my message out there, talking with people, working with people one-on-one, counseling people, giving readings, all of these things. And then all of a sudden, I found this new concept, which was human design, and was really, really drawn to studying it more and integrating it into my own work. And I had the courage all of a sudden to even integrate astrology in my work, because I've never done that before, because I thought it was too weird and too out there, and I never knew how I could actually marry the two worlds that I wanted to have, which was basically female empowerment, how I started my whole business, right? Helping people, helping women especially to build their own business, to build their own project, to express themselves creatively. So that's definitely always been a desire that I had for other people, and I wanted to help them. But I was always a little bit scared to stand in the light myself, right? I was always the kind of background person that would cheerlead others, but I would never really step outside of my own comfort zone and really be mostly dominant in the public sphere, or really actually see myself as someone who could be successful with all of that. So I always had this backbone side business, for example, or just side jobs. And I never thought that this could be my main sort of career where I am successful and I sustain myself, right? And Taurus is all about sustaining myself, or sustaining oneself having your own resources, making money as well. All of these things are definitely Taurian things. And as you can see, it makes so much sense what I just shared with you, with Pluto on the 10th house, cusp basically on your midheaven. So a deep transformation when it comes to your career, Capricorn, your outside structures, right? How you make money as well. All of these things is really, really Capricorn. And obviously with Taurus rising, that's also, you know, finding your own value, understanding your own value, that had to rise in my consciousness, as I said earlier, so I can finally express myself creatively as well. And obviously Virgo is intercepted in that 5th house, but Virgo is still in that 5th house. And it's the energy of being of service in a really creative way, right? And as you can see, you have the moon and the sun and Mercury in between. Obviously, how interesting that I started the podcast, right? Especially because you can also see that Gemini rules the 2nd house of worth and value. So that's the value that I bring into the world with my voice, but it's also me understanding my worth through my voice, right? Through really sharing what I know and sharing my knowledge. And then you can see Jupiter in Scorpio in the 7th house. That's literally the manifestation of me working one-on-one with people, diving into people's psyche even, and helping them rewire their own structures. And all of that is obviously supported by a deep spiritual belief that I have, that I believe in, right? Understanding the universe, making sense of all of that. And it's also supported, obviously, because you can see Jupiter is trining Neptune and Pisces in the 11th house. So that's a spiritual community that I started to build then, right? But with all of that came actually this right here, right? That's Chiron and Aries retrograde. So inside of myself, it was still a different story, because I was so scared to be rejected for what I share, to be rejected for what I do, to be not successful with what I do, because it was a huge risk for me, right? Because I had to be really dependent on myself and build my own structures outside. And obviously, because that's not something that I've known before and no one in my family did before, that's risky, right? That's risky. And it was really, really, you know, stressful at times. And I had to heal that deep, deep wound of rejection and understand that it's not just about myself, not just about my ego. It's also about that spiritual community that I have, and the transformation that I can also bring into other people's lives when I work one-on-one with people. And the more I practice that, the more I shared, right? Actually, yeah, Gemini 2nd house and Mercury retrograde, the more I shared about my own journey, about my own understanding, my own belief system, everything that I in this year reflected on, because there was a lot of reflection going on, if you can't tell. The more I did that, the more I understood that everything that I reflect on every single day, that's a value for other people, right? Because I can help them understand the world. I can help them see the world through a different lens. And I definitely see that ever since this eclipse, 2018, it's been 2 years now, my whole life changed, right? I literally stepped into my light, and I definitely believe this is the reason for that, right? This eclipse triggered all of that energy inside of myself, because I saw, well, there is no denying. I can't hold back anymore. I can't stop myself anymore. The universe was literally pushing me towards finally getting over that feeling where I thought other people have to provide for me, other people have to, you know, build the structures for my life. And I actually put all of the responsibility that I could have for my own life into other people's hands, because I was scared of responsibility in that sense. And that brings it back to my birth chart, actually, because when we look now at the same chart, but with the overlay of my birth chart. So outside you see the solar return chart, and inside you see my birth chart. I know it looks a little bit funky at first, but you can see the solar return chart by just looking at, here you can see Taurus rising. So Taurus, the rising sign, would be my 5th house natally, right? So this is the most important aspect, because it's the rising sign degree. So wherever you have your rising sign for the solar return year, you know that this house that the rising sign rules is probably the most dominant house, because it's the house that also needs the most development, right? Because that's how I see the rising sign. It's the sign that has to rise in your consciousness the most. So that means that this house has to rise in your consciousness the most, and is then the first house, right? The number one house, so to speak, in that whole year. And for me, that was definitely, as you can see, the 5th house, right? The 5th house of creativity. And you can also see that Uranus, that was in the solar return chart in the 12th house, Uranus is now here in the 5th house, the beginning of the 5th house, which is a transit I'm still obviously working with because Uranus is really slow moving. So there's still a lot of creative insights and and changes basically happening all the time for me in my creative life, but that's another story. But yeah, as you can see, that was literally the start, because Uranus just entered my 5th house, where I felt this electrifying need to finally share something expressively, right? To share my own expression, to be creative, to become a creator. And a lot of that had to do with my own core wounds that I have, relative to my own self-image, relative to my own shining, so to speak, because I had this fear of not being able to shine, not being seen, you know, not knowing what my magic is. That's my whole business, is not knowing what makes me special, right? Well, and Leo wants to be special. And as you can see, I have Chiron conjunct my sun. And for that solar return and that eclipse, that was literally triggering my Chiron wound, right? And Mercury retrograde was on top of that. So that was me finally talking about the wounds that I have instead of bottling them up, right? And what I needed for that was a lot of reflection. Where do all of my blocks come from? And how can I finally heal through them and then help other people heal their wound as well? And that's a big, big story of my whole business, right? Understanding that I have all of these challenges just so I can overcome them, make sense of them. And that's how I help people now to understand, well, yes, the human psyche is really complex, but actually, if you understand the meaning and intention of your wounds, it's so much easier to face them. And when you can overcome them, you can help others, right? That's my whole approach. And that's why I say that, you know, even no transits in your life is ever bad or ever doomed, or you're never doomed with your chart, you know. Even if you have the most challenging chart in the world, there is a gift in all of your wounds, in all of the death. And obviously you can see that's all 8th house. So all the darkness, all the secrets wanted to be revealed. And I finally shined the light on that. And I saw that this is my destiny, right? The North Node is also in Leo, and the North Node is literally on top of my natal Mercury retrograde, right? So I had to talk about all of these things. And that's why I started a podcast, right? So that's really, really mind-blowing when you think about it. But then topping it up, everything with Jupiter, we talked about Jupiter before, is my chart ruler, first of all, natally. So because I'm a Sag rising, so Jupiter is always really important. Wherever Jupiter is transiting, I know that there is something really significant and impactful happening in my life. And as you can see, for that solar return, Jupiter was conjunct my natal Pluto. So that was triggering the whole reason why I'm here, right? Because I always say Pluto is soul. Pluto is the soul, and it's the very reason you are born and reborn again, right? You incarnate. There's a strong desire that Pluto has to transform something in your life, and that's the whole reason you're here. So this whole reason why I'm here was basically triggered by Jupiter. Made it bigger. It made it finally possible for me to see it, to realize it, right? Because yes, Pluto in the 12th house can also mean I don't really understand what the meaning is, when that's actually a question that I had for a long time in my life. Like, what's the meaning of life? And still to this day, you know, that's a core reason why I choose to really work with evolutionary astrology. I want to know why the soul came here, right? What's the story of your soul? And obviously the 12th house is not just the hidden, the subconscious, it's also the collective, right? It's the collective, it's us, it's unity, it's oneness. And that's why I feel it as my calling to help other people, right? The whole collective to see we are all one, right? We have all one source. We all are from one source, but we are different parts of source. And everyone has their own assignment, their own cosmic blueprint, their own contract. So let's just all stick to that core contract that you have and actualize that, right? Make it happen. And then we can finally come to oneness again, and we are united again, and we see that everyone is a puzzle piece of the expansion of the universe. That's one of my core missions where I do this work, where I work with astrology as well to help you understand that cosmic blueprint. But all of that started with that solar return in 2018 to see, well, I could do that as a profession, right? And I could do that and share that with the world and not just do it for myself, right? And obviously another really, really mind-blowing thing is that, you know, for the solar return, we had Pluto in my midheaven, right? And now you can see that Venus, right, which is my 5th house in the solar return, Venus is when you overlay it with my natal chart, literally also on top of my natal midheaven. So it was destined for me to do something career-wise, right? To integrate my passion, my creativity into my career. Because natally, I have a midheaven in Libra, and the ruling planet of Libra is also Venus. So that's another really mind-blowing layer too. And to top it up, because I told you, like, all of these things are not coincidences. They are perfectly lined up for me to finally see, this is why you are here, right? You can see that my North Node in Sagittarius was conjunct Saturn, seriously taking action towards my purpose, right? Towards my destiny in this life, which is in Sagittarius, finding my own belief system, my own truth. The 29 Sag is also the galactic center to a certain degree. So there's the connection to the universe, to something divine again. And Saturn retrograde was really like making me feel you have to take action on that. Otherwise you will be depressed, deprived, and feel like there's something missing, right? Because Saturn, if Saturn is depressing you, it means that you have to pay attention and learn the lessons. And I've definitely had my periods in this year where I felt depressed, where I felt challenged, especially because you can see that Pluto, the transiting Pluto, is on top of my moon, Neptune, Uranus conjunction, all happening right here, right? So, and all of that is in the first and second house. So it's all about my self-image and my self-worth, and really discovering all of that, like what's the value that I can bring into the world. And it was just highlighted by Mars then in Aquarius right here down on the bottom of my chart. But it's all my value, you know, it's all my second house and rediscovering my value. And as you can see, Neptune in Pisces, which was in the solar return chart, the 11th house community, is here in the third house of communication, right? So obviously, again, we are at the same topic, you know, Mercury retrograde, all of the retrogrades, all of the Mercury themes, where I had to share the message, where I had to start that podcast, where I had to speak, where I had to vocalize everything that I had internalized for years and years and years. I had to finally bring it into the public, right? And that's ultimately what made me successful then also. And I think it's just really mind-blowing to see how accurate these solar return charts can be. Most of the time, I mean, in my personal life, I can definitely tell that in hindsight, you will realize that even more. But, you know, it's also so powerful to just know, okay, this is the theme of my life. And another layer that I could bring into the whole conversation, which I actually do in the solar return reading as well, is to use annual perfections. If you don't know what annual perfections are, it's basically every single birthday another house gets activated in your chart, and that house will be the most dominant house. And so obviously when you're born, it's the first house, second birthday, second house, third birthday, third house, and so on and so forth. And then you can calculate. And because I know that this year, so from starting with my birthday 2019, I have a fourth house activation year. What that means is that for 2018, I actually also had a third house activation year. So can you see that it was destined for me to speak up, to talk about my message, to talk about the truth that I finally discovered and finally reconnected to and owned, right? Releasing all of the belief systems that I might have had from childhood, from whatever it is. I had to find my own truth, right? And it was just amplified by Saturn on my natal North Node. So yeah, I think that's a really powerful example. And I just want to again highlight that, you know, this could have been any solar return chart, right? Obviously. And every solar return chart in that sense is really powerful, but it's especially powerful when there's the North Node and the moon, and it's like, it's a new moon, obviously. That's a new start of something. That's first and foremost one thing we have to see. So even if your birthday is a new moon or a full moon, that's always also powerful, because you bring that new moon, full moon energy into the next year, right? The whole next year. It sets the theme for the year. But top that with an eclipse, that's just so fated. It's so meant to be. There is no, you know, you can't escape that. Eclipses are just, they set the tone, right? That's destiny calling, so to speak. And I definitely hope that this little example that I have from my own personal life, and I always value other people's actual experiences with things like that as well. I hope that this really inspired you to look maybe even back and see, have I ever had a birthday where it was an eclipse? And how did that change my life when I look back? And what happened since then, you know, all of these things. And if you happen to have a birthday again in June or July this year, definitely look if it's really actually also happening on an eclipse day, which would be really mind-blowing. Or just, you know, in November and December, we have another set of eclipses. So just see if you ever have an eclipse birthday, because I feel like that's literally the universe helping you as well, because the moon and the sun and the north node, that's like such a potent energy that helps us really, really to take action. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think that anything when it comes to transits is random, right? Nothing is random, because you are born and you choose your birthday during a specific time to know, okay, when I come into the world during that time, I know exactly that I have these specific transits happening, right? And these transits will help me the best way possible to actualize that soul contract that I have. You just have to learn to listen, learn to see the signs, and learn to see the synchronicities. And obviously I have Venus in Virgo. I love to analyze these things. And if you are not a fan of analyzing, you can definitely always just ask an astrologer to analyze it for you and then unpack it in the way that I just did. I think it's really powerful. Obviously, there are more and more layers I could reveal to you when it comes to that solar return chart and that eclipse chart. But I think, you know, that's already so mind-blowing and enough things to reflect on. So I want you to see again in your own personal life if you happen to have an eclipse, and definitely leave me a comment down below in the comments if you have an eclipse birthday this year, how you feel about it, if you already know that you had an eclipse birthday, you know, a couple of years ago, whatever it is, and how that changed your life. I would love to know, because I feel, again, as I said before, that's so powerful to have and not random at all. Definitely means the universe is supporting you for the whole year. I'm definitely really grateful that I had this eclipse birthday, because it literally is the very reason why I do this video today, why I started my business in the way that I did. Or I actually started a business earlier, but it was never successful until I found the right way to actually approach it, right? And until I finally overcame all of my own doubts and fears. And that's a big part of my message today, right? And then obviously human design is a big part of that, and that's randomly popped into my life during that year as well. So there are a lot of things that I have to be saying thank you for this eclipse birthday. Yeah, but I definitely think solar return charts are a little bit undervalued, I guess, or underhyped. We should talk about them more. I'm already really excited about my solar return birthday this year. But yeah, I don't want to bore you with my story any longer. I want you to study your solar returns now. If you have any questions relative to your solar return charts, leave them down below, or send me a message on Instagram at @MagicKathyOfficial. If you want to book in a solar return reading, you can also always reach out to me or find all of the infos and down below in the info box as well. And if you have an eclipse birthday, solar return, then happy birthday. You see it before or after, who knows? But I hope that you have an amazing year ahead. I actually know that you will have an amazing year ahead if you choose to work with that energy and not against it. Because one thing we can't deny is that it definitely demands you to change, right? To change. If it's a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, doesn't matter. Even though solar eclipses are more potent, more powerful, so that's the new moon eclipses, right? It will mean new beginnings, right? It will mean new beginnings. It will mean change, transformation, all of these things, which is not always easy. But if you resist it, you will, you know, you will feel it. You will feel it. So go with the flow and go with what presents itself in your life in that year, and trust that the universe has your back, because you can see how supported you are by just looking at these transits. I mean, how supported was I in this year to do what I do now? And I definitely listened to it, you know, not straight up from the get-go, I have to say. I also had to release a couple of things in my life, and there was a lot of loss and pain in this year as well. It was not all sunshine, roses and unicorns. No, actually there was a lot of loss, but I'm grateful that I did it, because otherwise, as I said earlier, I would not be here today sitting with you talking about solar return charts. So I'm excited to hear from you. Leave me your feedback down below. If you like these videos with examples, I would love to know, because usually Chiron, Sun, Mercury conjunction. I don't like to talk about myself too much, but I think that was a powerful example, and the best example I could deliver to you relative to an eclipse birthday. Could talk about Donald Trump as well, but that's a whole nother story. But I think this example, because a lot of people are really interested in how did you make it happen? You know, how did you start becoming an astrologer? How did you start your own business? How did you do all of that? And I definitely have to say thank you for the energy in the cosmos that helped me align in the best way possible to also know in which direction I should go. Happy eclipse season. Happy eclipse birthday if you happen to have a birthday, and we will see each other very soon. And I definitely hope that all of the energy this month, next month, all of the eclipses really help you to step into your magic.